All right, let's talk about a challenge that's probably giving a lot of cloud architects a serious headache. Trying to tame the absolute chaos of multi-cloud logging. Does this sound familiar? Your day is spent juggling logs from AWS, then jumping over to Azure, and then trying to make sense of something in GCP, all just to piece together what actually happened during an incident. It really is like being a detective, where every single clue is in a completely different language. This fragmentation, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a huge operational bottleneck that slows everyone down. We call this the multi-cloud logging maze, because that's what it feels like. When your logs are scattered everywhere, in all these different formats, you're not just dealing with a messy setup. You're actually building data silos, making troubleshooting take forever, and creating some really critical blind spots for your security. Just think about it for a second. Most teams that are operating across the big clouds are forced to manage at least 3 totally different logging formats. That means 3 different systems to learn, maybe 3 different query languages to master, and just a ton of extra cognitive load when you're in the middle of a crisis. But what if there was something like a universal translator for all this complexity? Well, that's where we bring in the hero of our story today, OpenTelemetry. It's a project designed specifically to bring order to this chaos with a single open standard for everything. So what is it exactly? OpenTelemetry, or OTel for short, is this vendor-neutral, open-source standard for instrumenting your applications. And here's the absolute key. It works regardless of where they run. It doesn't care if your services are on AWS, Azure, GCP, or on-prem. It gives you one common way to handle all your telemetry data, especially those critical logs. And this really gets to the human side of it. A single standard means your engineers don't have to constantly switch context between all these different logging ecosystems. They can focus on what they're supposed to be doing, building great software, not fighting their tools. It just makes life so much simpler. Okay, the theory sounds awesome, but how do we actually do this? Let's break down the blueprint. We're going to walk through a simple but really powerful 3-step architecture to get all your logs singing the same tune. Step 1 is all about collecting. The idea is to deploy these lightweight open telemetry collectors right alongside your applications and services in each one of your clouds. These collectors basically sit at the edge, grabbing the logs right at the source before they go anywhere else. Now for step 2, and this is where the real magic happens: standardize. As those collectors ingest logs from, say, CloudWatch or Azure Monitor, they automatically translate them from their native proprietary formats into that one common open telemetry format. This is your universal translator in action. And finally, step 3 is to centralize. Now that all your logs speak the same language, you can forward them to a single destination that you choose. This could be a security tool, like a SIEM, some long-term storage, or your favorite observability platform. The point is, you're no longer locked into a specific cloud provider's tooling. You're in control. Now that blueprint is pretty straightforward, but it leads to a really critical architectural decision. Do you send everything to one single global hub, or do you gather up your logs inside each cloud first before sending them on? This is the one hub or many question that every architect is going to have to answer. So let's break down the 2 main strategies. On one side, you have the fully centralized model. Every log from every cloud goes directly to one single place. On the other side, you've got the per-cloud aggregation model. Here, you set up an intermediary collection point inside each cloud to gather logs before forwarding them. Let's really walk through these trade-offs, because they're important. The fully centralized model is definitely simpler to manage, but you can get hit with some huge data egress fees. The per-cloud model helps slash those costs, and it improves latency, but it does add a bit more complexity. And here's a huge one: data sovereignty. You know those strict rules that say data from Germany has to stay in Germany? With the per-cloud model, that becomes way easier to enforce. For a global company, that might be the only option. For a startup, the simplicity of the centralized model might be worth the extra cost. So, at the end of the day, there is no single best answer here. The right choice for you depends completely on your organization's unique priorities. Are you optimizing for cost, for performance, or are compliance rules completely non-negotiable? You have to weigh these things to find the right balance for your situation. So, once you've made that choice and you've implemented your unified logging pipeline, what does that actually unlock for you? This is about so much more than just making troubleshooting easier. This is about building the foundation for your organization's future in observability. Let's do a quick recap of the key takeaways. First, fragmented logs are not just messy, they create serious, dangerous blind spots. Second, OpenTelemetry is that universal standard that fixes the problem. Third, that simple, collect, standardize, centralize pattern is your core architecture. Fourth, your aggregation strategy, whether it's centralized or per cloud, comes down to carefully weighing those trade-offs. And finally, remember that unified logging is the critical first step to achieving real end-to-end observability across your entire stack. So this leaves us with one final question to think about. Once you have this unified view, once you've finally conquered visibility across all your clouds, what new insights are you going to discover? What are you going to build with that new power? Thanks for watching.